Okay, today we're going to have a look at using some watercolours. So we've got the watercolour tray here, we've got a brush, we've got some clean water in a pot, just a small amount, and we've got a small piece of paper towel just to wipe our cloth on. So what we're going to do is we've got, like we did with the coloured pencils, we have an image up here that is a colour image, and down here we have the graffiti drawn out, but obviously without colour. Now what we're going to do first of all, what I've done first of all, is use these colour tests to create a palette of colours that we might use as the basic colours to start. So obviously you can see I've picked out a blue colour, which, although this isn't blue, is more of a turquoise. We can start with that. So let's have a look at using these watercolours. Now we're not using watercolour paper here to start, so we've got to be careful not to flood water onto the paper. Now if we pick a colour here, so I'm going to pick in this kind of fire effect down the bottom here, there is some orange. So you can see in our watercolour palette we've got an orange there, and just a small amount of water on the brush, very small amount of water on the brush, just wiping that off. Just move the brush about onto the watercolour, and we can now use it to fill our palette. Now, like shading with the coloured pencils, we can add, by kind of putting a bit of water on here and moving this about, we can get a bit more depth to our colour. So, and we can see there's a different colour just going over there, but I don't want to flood it too much. We can see now that we've got a yellow and an orange. So the first thing we're going to do is just, I've added some colours here, but I think what we're going to do is we're just looking at the colours we've got available. We can mix the colours, but I think going first of all with just the colours we've got and seeing how they look from going on here on the palette. Try not to move too many about because they all kind of get smeary. A small amount of water, working it onto the watercolour block, and then, and you can see we've got a colour here, kind of matches, so you can add this. Now it might be that we need to mix some of the colours to get our colours we need. So for example here, I'm adding that over, and you can see that we're creating another colour by adding these over. You could practice on your colour tests. So for example, if you feel that colour needs changing, small amount of green, and just see how does it affect the colour. What does the colour come out like when it's dry? So what we're doing for our first exercise is just looking at the colours on the sheet that we might use, looking at the colours on here. So we've actually got a turquoise here, so again you can see that I'm not using too much water, not using too much water at all. Really, this sort of motion is the best to get a uniform colour. And the last colour that I think, I've got orange, I've got red, I've got greens and yellows. I could perhaps try just to see how it looks on the paper, see how it matches up. So we want to see, experiment with our colours here and see what we're going to do to match this, using these colours, mixing these colours to get a nice effect from these here. So I think the last one is, I'm just going to use this darker blue, which may not be good for us. or a brighter blue, sorry, I think ultramarine, that kind of blue. And we've got this blue. I'm just going to, a little bit too much water there, you can see that it starts to cause us problems. Okay, so the first part of this exercise, in between, you might have noticed, just washing the brush, taking the water off the brush, using a paper towel. If you're going from a colour like the dark blue to a lighter like the yellow, you might even want to just go twice onto it and clean it off. So there's the first part of our watercolour. There's the brush back in the watercolour. So the first thing I've done there, I'm going to put that away now and put the lid back on it. And the first thing I've done is just produce a series of colour tests, seeing how I'm going to match up the colours in there to the colours that I'm going to use on there. And when I've done that, I can start adding colour to my graffiti pen.